Hi, and welcome to our famous speeches. Here we go with Cameron Carrera.
Okay, yeah. Mr. President, is it natural to man to indulge in the illusions of hope? We are apt to shut our eyes against the painful truth and listen to the song that sirens till she transforms us into beast. Is this the part of the wise man engaged in a great and arduous struggle for liberty? Are we disposed to be of the number of those who, having eyes, see not, and having ears, hear not? The things which so nearly concern their temporal salvation. For my part, whatever anguish of spirit it may cost, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I know of no way of judging the future but by the past, and judging the past and judging by the past. I wish to know what there have been in the conduct of the British ministry for the last 10 years to justify those hopes with which gentlemen have been pleased to solace themselves and the House. And what have we to oppose the British? Shall we try argument? Sir, we've been trying that for the last 10 years. Have we anything new to offer upon the subject? Nothing. We have held the subject up in every light of which it is capable, but it has been all in vain. Shall we resort to entreaty and humble supplication? What terms shall we find which have not been already exhausted? Let us not, I beseech you, sir, deceive ourselves. Sir, we have done everything that could be done to avert the storm which is now coming on. We have petitioned, we have remonstrated, we have supplicated, we have prostrated ourselves before the throne, and have implored its interposition to arrest the tyrannical hands of the ministry and parliament. Our petitions have been slighted. Our remonstrances have produced additional violence and insult. Our supplications have been disregarded, and we have been spurned with contempt from the foot of the throne. In vain after these things. May we indulge in the fond of hope and peace and reconciliation. There is no longer any room for hope. If we wish to be free, we must fight. I repeat it, sir, we must fight. An appeal to the arms and to the God of hosts is all that is left of us. They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so formidable an adversary. Sir, we are not weak if we make a proper use of those means which the God of nature hath placed in our power. 3 millions of people, armed in the holy cause of liberty, and such in a country as that which we possess, are invincible by any force which our enemy can send us against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come. It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war has actually begun. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here in idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is it life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but for me, give me liberty or give me death.
Great job, Miss Olivia. I wondered, did you have the microphone on?
Yeah, but I wasn't sure if it was working or not, so yeah.
So,
no.
let's see. Olivia, can you try the microphone, please?
Was it 4 minutes?
No.
Okay. Hello?
So, I'm not sure. Wasn't it working this morning, you guys, when you were doing it?
Yeah. Is it working now?
Okay, that sounded like it was working. Can you try it again?
Hello?
Is that working?
Yeah. You just have to hold it closer.
Okay, so you're gonna have to hold it closer. Henry, I've asked you 3 times to take your hat off. Next time I'm gonna ask you to go in the office. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. So if you also, and I messed up on Cameron's, could you start by saying who you're playing or what speech you're giving? Okay. You're good, Cameron, but Olivia, will you start that way, please?
Okay, I'm doing mine on Amelia Earhart and women in science.
Okay, I think it needs to be closer to your mouth. 5 minutes to say hello.
Hello, I'm doing Amelia Earhart, and I'm doing her speech about women in science.
Is that amplified, you guys?
No,
No,
but
I'm
I'm hearing
hearing
it go
the
through.
Huh?
I'm hearing her voice go through the microphone, but
I don't.
I don't think it's being amplified.
Okay, let's try this one then, because we really do need to be able to hear the speeches.
Karaoke.
Yeah, karaoke machines aren't exactly supposed to amplify your voice. They just
They're kind of meant to route it through speakers.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I was trying, guys. Okay, so want to switch microphones with me?
This is both.
You try that?
Hello?
Okay, try that.
Hello?
Is that better?
No,
No.
it's not even working at this point. Try the karaoke microphone
Try that.
through that.
Hello?
Try plugging the karaoke microphone.
Well, it might have a different size jacks.
Karaoke.
Hello.
Is that good now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Karaoke.
Okay, go ahead. Say who you're doing again.
I'm doing Amelia Earhart, and her speech is about women in science.
You have to
Was
have
that
it
on?
close to your mouth. Like,
Okay.
you have to be practically eating it for it to even work. So.
Okay, so are you sure it's working?
Yeah,
it's working.
Okay,
So you gotta have the microphone right next to your mouth, okay? And we'll just wipe it off in between each one. Okay.
I'm doing Amelia Earhart, and her speech is about women in science. This modern world of science and invention is of particular interest to women, for the lives of women have been more affected by its new horizons than those of any other group. Profound and stirring as have been accomplishments in the remoter fields of peer research, it is in the home that the applications of science achievement have perhaps been most far-reaching, and it is through changing conditions there that women have become the greatest beneficiaries in the modern scheme. Science has released them from much of the age-old drudgery connected with the process of living. Candle dipping, weaving, and crude methods of manufacturing necessities are things of the past for an increasing majority. Today, light, heat, and power may be obtained by pushing buttons, and cunningly manufactured and appealing products of all the world are available at the housewife's door. Indeed, beyond that door, she need not go, thanks to the miracles of modern communication and transportation. Not only has applied science decreased the toil in the home, but it has provided undreamed economic opportunities for women. Today, millions of them are earning their living under conditions made possible only through a basically altered industrial system. Probably no scientific development is more startling than the effect of this new and growing economic independence upon women themselves. Among all the marvels of modern invention, that with which I am most concerned is, of course, air transportation. Flying is perhaps the most dramatic of recent scientific attainment. In the brief span of 30-odd years, the world has seen an inventor's dream, first materialized by the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk, become an everyday actuality. Perhaps I am prejudiced, but to me, it seems that no other phase of modern progress contrives to maintain such a brimming measure of romance and beauty coupled with utility as does aviation. Aviation, this young modern giant, exemplified the possible relationship of women and the creations of science. Although women as yet have not taken full advantage of its use and benefits, air travel is as available to them as to men. As so often happens in introducing the new or changing the old, public acceptance depends peculiarly upon women's friendly attitude.
Quiet.
I don't think this is gonna stay on.
Well, do the best you can. Okay, there you go. If it falls off, you can just put it on the stand next to you. Okay. There we go. I appreciate the effort on the part.
407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little know, nor long remember, or what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us to living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us. That from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth.
Okay, Om. Is it on?
Yeah, it's not working. I don't think so.
Yell into it.
A
little bit.
No, yeah, you're fine. Just go ahead. Please
Okay.
remember to say who you're doing first, okay?
I'm doing Lou Gehrig and his farewell to baseball speech.
Okay.
For the past 2 weeks, you have been reading about a bad break. Yet today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. I've been in ballparks for 17 years, and I've never received anything but kindness and encouragement from you fans. When you look around, wouldn't consider it an honor to have known Jacob Ruppert, also the builder of baseball's greatest empire, Ed Barrow? To have spent 6 years with that wonderful little fellow, Miller Huggins, then to have spent the next 9 years with that outstanding leader, that smart student of psychology, the best manager in baseball today, Joe McCarthy? Sure, I'm lucky. With the New York Giants, a team that you'd give your right arm to beat, sends you a gift, that's something. When everybody down to the groundskeepers and those boys in white coats remember you with trophies, that's something. When you have a wonderful mother-in-law who takes sides with you and squabbles with her own daughter, that's something. When you have a father and a mother who work all their lives so you can have an education and build your body, it's a blessing. When you have a wife who has been a tower of strength and shown more courage than you ever dreamed existed, that's the finest I know. So I close in saying that I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for.
Nice job, Om.
It's not intimidating. I'm doing FDR's Day of Infamy or Declaration of War on Japan. Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by the naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan was still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking towards maintenance of peace in the Pacific. Indeed, 1 hour after Japanese air squadrons had commenced bombing in the American island of Oahu, the Japanese ambassador to the United States and his colleagues delivered to our Secretary of State a formal reply to a recent American message. While this reply stated that it seemed useless to continue existing diplomatic negotiations, it contained no threat or hint of armed attack. It will be recorded that the distance of Hawaii from Japan makes it obvious that the attack was deliberately planned many days or even weeks ago. During the intervening time, the Japanese government had deliberately sought to deceive the United States by false statements of expressions of hope for continued peace. The attack on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American and naval military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. Yesterday, the Japanese government also launched an attack against Malaya. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Hong Kong. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Guam. Last night, Japanese forces attacked the Philippine Islands. Last night, the Japanese attacked Wake Island. This morning, the Japanese attacked Midway Island. Japan has therefore undertaken a surprise offensive extending throughout the Pacific area. The facts of yesterday and today speak for themselves. The people of the United States have already formed their opinions and well understand the implications to the very life and safety of our nation. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense, but always will our whole nation remember the character of onslaught against us. No matter how long it might take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people and their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. I believe that I interpret the will of Congress and of the people when I assert that we will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us. Hostilities exist. There's no blinking of the fact that our people, our territory, and our interest are in grave danger. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God. I ask that Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Great job, Jesse. This page.
I'm doing JFK's We Choose to Go to the Moon speech.
Okay.
We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people. For space science, like nuclear science and all technology, has no conscience of its own. Whether it will become a force for good or ill depends on man, and only if the United States occupies a position of preeminence can we help decide whether this new ocean will be a sea of peace or a new terrifying theater of war. I do not say that we should or will go unprotected against the hostile misuse of space any more than we go protected against the hostile use of land or sea. But I do say that space can be explored and mastered without feeding the fires of war and without repeating the mistakes that man has made in extending his writ around this globe of ours. There's no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind, and its opportunity for peaceful cooperation may never come again. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
Here's Tess. Great job, Paige.
Mine is It a Crime to Vote? By Susan B. Anthony. Friends and fellow citizens, I stand before you tonight under indictment for the alleged crime of having voted at the last presidential election without having the full lawful right to vote. It shall be my work this evening to prove to you that in thus voting, I not only committed no crime, but instead simply exercised my citizens' rights, guaranteed to me and all the United States citizens by the national Constitution, beyond the power of any state to deny. When 100 to 1 million people enter into a free government, they do not barter away their natural rights. They simply pledge themselves to protect each other in the enjoyment of their prescribed judicial and legislative tribunals. They agreed to abandon the methods of brute force in the adjustment of their differences and adopt those of civilization. It was we the people, not we the white male citizens, nor yet we the male citizens, but we the whole people who formed the Union. And we formed it not to give the blessings of liberty, but to secure them, not to half ourselves and half our prosperity, but to the whole people, women as well as men. And it is downright mockery to talk to women of the enjoyment of the blessings of liberty, while they are denied the only means of securing them provided by this democratic Republican government, the ballot. The only question left to be settled now is, are women persons? And I hardly believe any of our opponents will have the hardihood to say they are not. Being persons, then, women are citizens, and no state has a right to make any law or to enforce any old law that shall abridge these privileges or immunities. Hence, every discrimination against women in the Constitution and laws of several states today is null and void, precisely as in everyone against Negroes. Thank you.
Nice job. All right, Mr. Jose, you guys are doing wonderfully. I'm really proud of you.
Okay,
Really close, okay?
like this.
Yeah.
So I'm doing the Wrath of Grapes boycott by Cesar Chavez. I'm speaking to you about the Wrath of Grapes boycott. The worth of humans is involved here. 20 years ago, over 17 million Americans united in a grape boycott campaign that transformed the simple act of refusing to buy grapes into a powerful and effective force against poverty and injustice. Through the combined strengths of a national boycott, California farm workers won many of the same rights as other workers, to the right to organize and negotiate with farmers. 20 years later, our contracts still seek to limit the spread of poison in our food and fields, but we need to help once again if we are to succeed. A powerful self-serving alliance between the California governor and the $14 billion agriculture company has resulted in a systematic and reckless poisoning of not only California farm workers, but of grape consumers throughout our nation and Canada. The hard-won law enacted in 1975 has been trampled beneath the feet of self-interest. Blatant violations of California labor laws are constantly ignored. And worst of all, the indiscriminate and even illegal use of dangerous pesticides has radically increased in the last decade, causing illnesses, permanent disability, and even death. We have known for many years that pesticides used in agriculture pollute the air, earth, and water, contaminate animals and humans that are found in the tissue of newborn infants and mother's milk. This March, the New York Times reported that the Environmental Protection Agency finally considers pesticide pollution its most urgent problem, noting virtually everything is exposed to pesticides. The Environmental Protection Agency experts have warned that pesticide residue is being found in a growing number of food products. Some poisons registered for use in the last 30 years cause cancer, mutations, and birth defects. Most chemicals in the market have insufficient and sometimes fraudulent test results. Underground water supplies of 23 states are already tainted, and farm workers suffer some pesticide-induced illness in alarming numbers. Consumers must be alerted now that no one can actually define or measure so-called safe exposure to residual poison that accumulates in the human body as environments differ and each person's tolerance is unique. What might be safe statistically for an average 40-year-old male might irreparably harm an elderly consumer, a child, or the baby of a pregnant mother. What we do now is that human lives are worth more than the grapes, and that innocent-looking grapes on the table may disguise poisonous residues hidden deep inside where washing cannot reach. Let me share with you the frightening facts with you. Last July, the New York Times National Television reported that nearly 1,000 California, Pacific Northwest, Alaskan, and Canadian consumers became ill as a result of eating watermelons tainted with pesticides. With the powerful insecticide aldicarb, labeled the most acutely toxic pesticide registered in the United States. Yet aldicarb cannot be legally used on watermelons. And a new study shows pesticides used in the growing used and growing may be responsible for the illness of over 300,000 of the nation's 4 million farm workers. How can I explain these chemicals to 3-year-old Amalia Larlos, who will never walk, born with a spinal defect due to pesticide exposure of her mother? What statistics are important to Adrian Espinoza, 7 years old and dying of cancer with 8 other children, whose only source of water has polluted with pesticides? What headlines can justify the loss of irrigator Manuel Anaya's right hand, amputated due to recurrent infection from powerful herbicides added to the water he worked with in the fields? How do we comfort the mother of maimed and stillborn infants, the parents who watched their teenage children sicken or die? What court will hear the case of 32-year-old Juan Chaboya, murdered by deadly chemicals in the freshly sprayed fields outside San Diego? His dead body dumped by the growers 45 miles away from Tijuana Clinic. What excuse for justice will we offer his 4 children and his widow if we do nothing? Now is the time for all of us to stand as a family and demand a response in the name of decency. Too much is at stake. This is a battle that none of us can afford to lose because it is a fight for the future of America. It is a fight we can win, and it is a fight that everyone can join. Now I'm reaching out to you for help because consumers and farm workers must stand together as one family if we are to be heard. I'm not asking you to give up wine or raisins. I am asking you to give your commitment and valuable support. I am asking you to join us now and to be counted on and be counted to join the growing family of individuals who will boycott grapes until the demands of decency have been met. And hard as it is for me to ask for money, I am asking you to contribute to the cause. $100, $50, $15, whatever you can afford, whatever you would spend on grapes this year. Ensure that every week 1 million more consumers will know the truth. You have my personal pledge that every cent of your contributions will be spent on the Wrath of Grapes campaign, beginning this message into every home in America, because this message is a source of combined strength.
Nice job for today, Brandon.
So I am doing General MacArthur's Peril of the Congress speech. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, and distinguished members of the Congress, I stand on this rostrum with a sense of deep humility and great pride. Humility in the wake of those great American architects of our history who have stood here before me. Pride in the reflection that this forum of legislative debate represents human liberty in the purest form, yet devised. Here are centered the hopes and aspirations and faith of the entire human race. I address you with neither rancor nor bitterness in the fading twilight of life, but with one purpose in mind: to serve my country. The issues are so global and so interlocked that to consider the problems of one sector and oblivious to those of another is but to court disaster for the whole. The communist threat is a global one. You cannot appease, its successful advance in one sector threatens the destruction of every other sector. You cannot appease or otherwise surrender to communism in Asia without simultaneously undermining our efforts to halt its advance in Europe. To understand the changes now appear upon the Chinese mainland, one must understand the changes in Chinese character and culture over the past 50 years. China, up to 50 years ago, was completely non-homogeneous, being compartmented into groups divided against each other. The war-making tendency was almost non-existent, as they still followed the tenets of the Confucian ideal of pacifist culture. At the turn of the century, under the regime of Jiang Zuolin, efforts toward greater homogeneity produced the start of nationalist urge. This was further and more successfully developed under the leadership of Chiang Kai-shek, but has been brought to its greatest fruition under the present regime to the point that it has now taken on the character of a united nationalism of increasingly dominant aggressive tendencies. Through these past 50 years, the Chinese people have thus become militarized in their concepts and in their ideals. They now constitute excellent soldiers with competent staffs and commanders. This has produced a new and dominant power in Asia, which for its own purposes allied with Soviet Russia, but with in its own concepts and methods has become aggressively imperialistic, with a lust for expansion and increased power in order to this type of imperialism. The Japanese people, since the war, have undergone the greatest reformation recorded in modern history. With a commendable will, eagerness to learn, and more capacity to understand, they have, from the ashes left in the war's wake, erected in Japan an edifice dedicated to the supremacy of individual liberty and personal dignity. And in the ensuing process, there has been created a truly representative government committed to the advance of political morality, freedom of economic enterprise, and social justice. On Formosa, the government of the Republic of China has had the opportunity to refute by action much of the malicious gossip which shall undermine the strength of its leadership on Chinese mainland. Men since the beginning have sought peace. Various methods through the ages have been attempted to devise an international process to prevent or settle disputes between nations. From the very start, workable methods were found insofar as individual citizens were concerned, but the mechanics of an instrumentally of larger international scope have never been successful. But once war is forced upon us, there is no other alternative than to apply every available means to bring it to a swift end. War's very object is victory, not prolonged indecision. In war, there is no substitute for victory. Those gallant men will often remain in my thoughts and in my prayers always. I'm closing my 52 years of military service. When I joined the Army, even before the turn of the century, it was the fulfillment of all my boyish hopes and dreams. The world has turned over many times since I've taken an oath on the plane at West Point, and hopes and dreams have long since vanished. But I still remember the refrain from one of the most popular barrack ballads of that day, which proclaimed proudly that old soldiers never die, they just fade away. And like the old soldier of that ballad, I now close my military career and just fade away. An old soldier who tried to do his duty as God gave him the light to see that duty. Goodbye.
I'm doing Gender Equality is Your Issue Too by Emma Watson. I am reaching out to you because I need your help. We want to end gender inequality, and to do that, we need everyone to be involved. This is the first campaign of its kind at the UN. We want to try and galvanize as many men and boys to be advocates for gender equality. And we don't just want to talk about it, but make sure it is tangible. I was appointed 6 months ago, and the more I've spoken about feminism, the more I realize that fighting for women's rights has too often become synonymous with man-hating. If there's one thing I know for certain, it is that this has to stop. For the record, feminism, by definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal rights and opportunities. It is the theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. I started questioning gender-based assumptions when at 8 I was confused at being called bossy because I wanted to direct the plays that we had put on for our parents, but the boys were not. When at 15, my girlfriends started dropping out of their sports teams because they didn't want to appear muscly. When at 18, my male friends were unable to express their feelings. I decided I was a feminist and this was uncomplicated to me, but my recent research has shown me that feminism has become an unpopular word. Apparently, I am among the ranks of women whose expressions are seen as too strong, too aggressive, isolating, anti-men, and unattractive. I am from Britain, and I think it is right that as a woman I am paid the same as my male counterparts. I think it is right that I should be able to make decisions about my own body. I think it is right that women be involved on my behalf in the policies and decision-making of my country. I think it is right that socially I'm afforded the same respect as men. But sadly, I can say that there is no one country in the world where all women can expect to receive these rights. There is no one country who can say they have achieved gender equality. These rights I consider to be human rights because I am one of the lucky ones. My life is sheer privilege because my parents didn't love me less because I was born a daughter. My school did not limit me because I was a girl. These influencers were the gender equality ambassadors that made me who I am today. They may not know it, but they are the inadvertent feminists who are changing the world today, and we need more of those. In 1995, Hillary Clinton made a famous speech in Beijing about women's rights. Sadly, many of the things she wanted to change are still a reality today. But what stood out for me the most was that only 30% of our audience was male. How can we affect change in the world when only half of it is invited or feels welcome to participate in the conversation? Men, I would like to take this opportunity to extend your formal invitation. Gender equality is your issue too. I've seen young men suffering from mental illness, unable to ask for help for fear it would make them look less macho. In fact, in the UK, suicide is the biggest killer of men between 20 and 49 years of age, eclipsing road accidents, cancer, and coronary heart disease. I've seen men made fragile and insecure by a distorted sense of what constitutes male success. Men don't have the benefits of equality either. Both men and women should feel free to be sensitive. Both men and women should feel free to be strong. It is time that we perceive gender on a spectrum, not as two opposing sets of ideals. You might be thinking, who is this Harry Potter girl? And what is she doing up on the stage at the UN? It's a good question, and trust me, I've been asking myself the same thing. I don't know if I'm qualified to be here.
All I know is that I care about this problem and I want to make it better. And my nervousness for the speech and my moments of doubt, I've told myself, if not me, who? If not now, when? If you have similar doubts when opportunities are presented to you, I hope these words might be helpful. We are struggling for a uniting word, but the good news is we have a uniting movement. It is called He for She. I am inviting you to step forward, to be seen, to speak up, to be the he for the she, and to ask yourself, if not me, who? If not now, when? Thank you.
Okay, it's gonna be close, guys. Time to yes? You sure you say who you're giving, okay? And make sure the microphone's on.
All right, I'm John F. Kennedy, and I'm doing his speech at the Berlin Wall. It's not on. I am proud to come to this city as the guest of your distinguished mayor, who has symbolized throughout the world the fighting spirit of West Berlin. And I am proud to visit the Federal Republic with your distinguished chancellor, who for so many years has committed Germany to democracy and freedom and progress, and to come here in the company of my fellow American, General Clay, who has been in this city during its great moments of crisis and will come again if ever needed. 2,000 years ago, the proudest boast was Civis Romanus Sum. Today in the world of freedom, the proudest boast is Ich bin ein Berliner. There are many people in the world who really don't understand, or say they don't, what is the great issue between the free world and the communist world. Let them come to Berlin. There are some who say that communism is the wave of the future. Let them come to Berlin. And there are some who say in Europe and elsewhere we can work with the communists. Let them come to Berlin. And there are even a few who say that it's true that communism is an evil system, but it permits us to make economic progress. Lass sei nach Berlin kommen. Let them come to Berlin. Freedom has many difficulties, and democracy is not perfect, but we have never had to put up a wall to keep our people in, to prevent them from leaving us. I want to say on behalf of my countrymen who live many miles away on the other side of the Atlantic, who are far distant from you, that they take the greatest pride that they have been able to share with you, even from a distance, the story of the last 18 years. I know of no town, no city that has been besieged for 18 years that still lives with the vitality and the force and the hope and the determination of the city of West Berlin. While the wall is the most obvious and vivid demonstration of the failures of the communist system, we take no satisfaction in it, for it is, as your mayor has said, an offense not only against history, but an offense against humanity, separating families, dividing husbands and wives and brothers and sisters, and dividing a people who wish to be joined together. What is true of this city is true of Germany. Real lasting peace in Europe can never be assured as long as 1 German out of 4 is denied the elementary right of free men. In 18 years of peace and good faith, this generation of Germans has earned the right to be free, including the right to unite their families and their nation in lasting peace with goodwill to all people. You live in a defended island of freedom, but your life is part of the main. So let me ask you as I close to lift your eyes beyond the dangers of today to the hopes of tomorrow, beyond the freedom merely of the city of Berlin or your country of Germany, to the advance of freedom everywhere, beyond the wall, to the day of peace with justice, beyond yourselves and ourselves to mankind. Freedom is indivisible, and when one man is enslaved, all are not free. When all are free, then we can look forward to that day when this city will be joined as one in this country and this great continent of Europe in a peaceful and hopeful globe. When that day finally comes, as it will, the people of West Berlin can take sober satisfaction in the fact that they were in the front lines for almost 2 decades. All free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin, and therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein Berliner.
Claire, I don't know if we're gonna get to you. I just have to swear about him doing his during lunch, like after everyone gets their food, he can go up there and do that. But I may have to bump you till tomorrow, and I really apologize. Are you okay with that? Are you gonna be here tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, that helps. Okay. All right.
Normans, bravest of nations, I have no doubt of your courage and none of your victory, which never by any chance or obstacle escaped your efforts. If indeed you had, once only, failed to conquer, there might be a need now to inflame your courage by exhortation, but your native spirit does not require to be roused. Bravest of men, what could the power of the Frankish king effect with all his people, from Lorraine to Spain, against Hastings, my predecessor. What he wanted of France he took, and gave to the king only what he pleased. What he had, he held as long as it suited him, and relinquished it only for something better. Did not Rollo, my ancestor, founder of our nation, with our fathers conquer at Paris the king of the Franks in the heart of his kingdom, nor had the king of the Franks any hope of safety until he humbly offered his daughter and possession of the country, which, after you, is called Normandy. Did not your fathers capture the king of the Franks at Rouen, and keep him there until he restored Normandy to Duke Richard? Then a boy, with this condition, that in every conference between the king of France and the Duke of Normandy, the duke should wear his sword, while the king should not be permitted to carry a sword nor even a dagger. This concession your fathers compelled the great king to submit to, as binding forever. Did not the same duke lead your fathers to Normandy at the foot of the Alps, and enforce submission from the lord of the town, his son-in-law, to his own wife, the duke's daughter? Nor was it enough for you to conquer men. He conquered the devil himself, with whom he wrestled, cast down, and bound him with his hands behind his back, and left him a shameful spectacle to angels. But why do I talk of former times? Did not you, in our own time, engage the Franks at Mortimer? Did not the Franks prefer flight to battle and use their spurs? Well, you, Ralph, the commander of the Franks, having been slain, reaped the honor and the spoil as the natural result of your usual success. Ah, let any one of the English whom, 100 times our predecessors, both Danes and Normans, have defeated in battle, come forth and shows that the race of Rollo ever suffered a defeat from his time until now, and I will withdraw conquered. Is it not, therefore, shameful that a people accustomed to be conquered, a people ignorant of war, a people even without arrows, should proceed in order of battle against you, my brave men? Is it not a shame that King Harold, perjured as he was in your presence, should dare to show his face to you? It is amazing to me that you have been allowed to see those who, by a horrible crime, beheaded your relations and Alfred my kinsman, and that their own heads are still on their shoulders. Raise your standards, my brave men, and set neither measure nor limit to your merited rage. May the lightning of your glory be seen, and the thunders of your onset heard from east to west. And be ye the avengers of noble blood.
Nice job. So, Claire, you want to go and go for it? I mean, are you on the longer side or the shorter side? Go. Bell rings, we're staying here. Guys, if you're in band, Mr. Garcia already knows you might be a minute or so late. I told him that you might be late because of your costumes. Let's do it, Claire.
I am doing the speech by Queen Elizabeth to the troops at Tilbury. My loving people, we have been persuaded by some that are careful of our safety to take heed how we commit ourselves to armed multitudes for fear of treachery. But I assure you, I do not desire to live to distress my faithful and loving people. Let tyrants fear. I have always so behaved myself that under God, I have placed my chiefest strength and safeguard in the loyal hearts and goodwill of my subjects. And therefore I am come amongst you, as you see at this time, not for my recreation and disport, but being resolved in the midst and heat of the battle, to live and die amongst you all, to lay down for my God and for my kingdom and for my people, my honor and my blood, even in the dust. I know I have the body of a weak, feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and a king of England too. And think foul scorn that Parma or Spain or any prince of Europe should dare to invade the borders of my realm, to which rather than any dishonor shall grow by me, I myself will take up arms. I myself will be your general, judge, and rewarder of every one of your virtues in the field. I know already for your forwardness you have deserved rewards and crowns, and we do assure you on the word of a prince, they shall be duly paid. In the meantime, my lieutenant general shall be in my stead, than whom never prince commanded a more noble or worthy subject, not doubting, but by your obedience to my general, by your concord in the camp and your valor in the field, we shall shortly have a famous victory over these enemies of my God.
This announcement is for 7th and 8th grade band members. Please remember you have full band rehearsal second period. Thank you.
You're done.
We shall shortly have a famous victory over these enemies of my God, of my kingdom, and of my people.
You guys were great. I'm very impressed. Nice job. Sawyer, we will go at lunch today. Sawyer's actually right there. Jesse?
In like 2 minutes.
All right, where's Jesse? What is she? George Jonas. We're delivered. Hi.
Perfect.
Nope. Okay, you can go. They are right here. Feel them. Oh, they were just for your face? Okay. You look great.
Enjoyed the live stream.
Okay.